The story opens with flickering light and the gentle static of an old videotape. Images waver into focus. A sunlit racecourse. Banners snapping in the breeze. The crowd's cheers rising and falling like an ocean. A younger Sir Alistair Finch stands beside his radiant wife, her laughter bright and unguarded. Between them, a proud chestnut stallion rears back, mane flying. The name Sovereign shines on his blanket. Cameras flash, hands grasp trophies. Alistair's wife cups the horse's muzzle, pressing her cheek to its face, and Alistair, for a fleeting moment, is simply a man with his whole world before him. The memory is gone in a blink. Now, the light in Alistair's London office is cold and harsh, spilling across neat rows of polished mahogany. The sounds of the crowd are replaced by the relentless ticking of a grandfather clock. Alistair stands alone by the window, gaze fixed not on the city below, but on a framed photograph in his hand. The same woman, the same horse. He lets the image linger a second longer, then, almost angrily, locks his phone and turns away. A knock. The office door opens just enough to admit Michael, his longtime manager, eyes downcast. "Sir, there's news from the stable." Alistair's jaw tightens. He doesn't need to ask. He's heard the reports, Sovereign's leg, the prognosis. The stallion, once the pride of the Finch family, is now just another broken animal, a failed investment, a remnant. I can't bear the sight of it. It was her legacy, and it failed. His voice is flat, but each word lands like a hammer. Michael hesitates, the weight of the moment drawing out the silence. "Shall I arrange for the vet, sir?" Alistair turns his back to the window. The city stretches out beneath him, uncaring and immense. He nods. That should be the end of it. But Michael lingers, words unspoken trembling on his lips. Alistair finally glances up, eyes colder than the marble desk. "Handle it quietly. I don't want a scene." Michael nods and withdraws. Alone again, Alistair lets out a breath he didn't realize he was holding, his shoulders sagging just a fraction. His hand, almost of its own will, lifts the phone. The picture of his wife glows for a brief second before he locks the screen. He stares into nothing, his features frozen in a mask of control. But behind his eyes, the past gnaws at him. Night falls in the city. A sleek black car glides through winding country roads, headlights cutting through the mist. It comes to a halt at a nondescript veterinary clinic far from prying eyes. The manager steps out, leading a horse trailer. Inside, Sovereign stands, muscles trembling, eyes wide and searching. He senses something, an ending, perhaps. Inside the clinic, Dr. Arthur Wallace, an aging veterinarian, waits, hands wringing. His office is cluttered with the paraphernalia of a life spent saving animals, old ribbons, faded photographs, battered books. He reads the chart again, as if the facts might change. Michael's instructions are clear. It has to be done tonight. No press, no fuss. Arthur looks up at the magnificent creature before him, heart heavy. He's seen too many good animals cast aside when they're no longer profitable. But this is Sovereign, a legend. The horse's eyes meet his, and for a moment, Arthur sees not a beast, but a soul, confused, betrayed. He prepares the syringe with trembling hands. As he approaches, Sovereign shifts back, snorting softly, the injury evident but the spirit unbroken. Arthur's mind whirls with memories of old races, of Sovereign's victories, of the woman who used to whisper encouragement to both horse and vet. Arthur steps back. He can't do it. I can't do it," he whispers. He steps out, phone shaking in his hand. He dials a number he hasn't used in years. When the line picks up, his voice is low, urgent. I can't do it, but I know someone who might. Back in London, Alistair sits alone, glass in hand. The room is silent save for the ticking clock. He stares at the closed door, at the empty seat where his wife used to read, where laughter once filled the space. His thumb runs unconsciously over a scar on his hand, a remnant of Sovereign's first race, when he'd been thrown and she had been the one to comfort him, both horse and man. He looks at the glass, then pours the whiskey out into the sink. He can't sleep. He doesn't want to dream. Somewhere, deep inside, the decision twists, sharper than guilt, deeper than anger. At the veterinary clinic, Arthur dials a second number. The phone rings through the night. A woman's voice, uncertain but clear, answers. Ellie Vance speaking. Arthur's relief is palpable. Ellie, I have a situation, and I need your help. The juxtaposition is brutal. The warmth and light of the old memory, the family, the pride, the love, all obliterated by the cold, businesslike efficiency of the present. Sovereign, once a symbol of hope and legacy, is now little more than a problem to be erased. Yet the story refuses to let the reader, or Alistair, look away from the pain at its core. As Arthur waits in the shadows, stroking Sovereign's neck, he catches his own reflection in the clinic's window. He looks older than he feels, weighed down by the secrets of a world that doesn't forgive weakness. He whispers to Sovereign, "You deserved better. We all did." In the distance, a car's headlights pierce the darkness. A new chapter is about to begin. But for now, the night belongs to the wounded. The phone rings again in Alistair's empty office. He doesn't answer. Outside, rain begins to fall, erasing the tracks of what's been done. But not the scars left behind. Ellie Vance sat beneath the slanted roof of her modest office at Oakstead Healing, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea, the steam rising in slow, lazy spirals. Beyond the frosted window, morning sunlight spilled across green Welsh fields, dappling the paddocks with gold. Horses grazed quietly. The world here was stitched together by the sound of hooves on grass and the gentle hum of lives in slow repair. Inside, Ellie's desk was a clutter of schedules, dog-eared therapy manuals, and letters of thanks from veterans and anxious parents. On the walls hung photos of Oakstead's first days, the barn freshly painted, volunteers grinning, horses trotting out for the first time. This place was her purpose, a sanctuary built from the bones of regret. Her phone vibrated. The call last night from Dr. Arthur Wallace hadn't left her mind. The tremor in his voice, the unspoken urgency. "Ellie, I have a situation, and I need your help." She'd agreed, instinctively. Helping creatures in distress was what she did, what she owed, somehow, to the world and to herself. She checked her watch. 6:04 a.m., early, even by her standards, but sleep had been scarce. She sipped her tea and tried to steady herself, nerves fluttering. The past clung close to her these days. Images surfaced. Bright lights, a sterile clinic, a rush of shouted orders, then silence. That London memory never truly faded. Not again. This time I'll get it right. A soft knock broke her thoughts. Olivia, a young assistant, poked her head in. "Ellie, one of the boys is looking for you. He's in the lower paddock." Ellie smiled, forcing away the memory. "I'll be right there." She shrugged on her jacket and headed outside, boots crunching the gravel path. The early mist hung low, the sky a pale watercolor above the barns. She found Ben, a veteran in his 30s, standing with a gray mare, hands buried deep in his pockets. "Couldn't sleep?" Ellie asked, standing beside him. Ben shook his head. "Old ghosts, you know?" She nodded. "They don't always stay buried." They talked a few minutes, sharing the quiet company that Oakstead fostered. Nothing forced, nothing demanded, just presence. That was the magic here. Healing came slow, and sometimes only by learning to sit with pain instead of banishing it. Ellie's phone buzzed again, startling her. Arthur's name flashed on the screen. She stepped away, answering in a low voice. "Arthur?" He sounded exhausted. "He's here, Ellie, the horse. I couldn't do it. I need you to come now." Ellie's gut clenched. "I'm on my way." Ellie drove through winding lanes, headlights cutting through the last scraps of fog. The landscape unfurled around her, sheep clustered on distant hills, wildflowers nodding in the wind. She rehearsed what she might find: a horse in pain, desperate eyes, maybe panic. She gripped the wheel tighter. Not again. The veterinary clinic loomed up, squat and lonely on the outskirts of a sleeping village. She parked and hurried inside, boots echoing on tiled floors. Arthur met her at the door, face haggard, eyes red. "In here, Ellie. Quiet now." He led her to a small stall at the back. The air was heavy with the scent of antiseptic and hay. There, in the half-light, stood the most striking horse Ellie had seen in years. Chestnut, proud, with a blaze down his face, but the animal's eyes were wild, flinching at every sound. She stood back, letting her breath slow, body language loose and unthreatening. She didn't reach out, didn't speak. She just was. The horse's ears flicked, nostrils flared. Arthur whispered, "He's been through hell, Ellie. They wanted him put down. He's limping, yes, but I think he's got a chance. I just couldn't do it." Ellie nodded, heart thudding. The stallion watched her, a question in his dark eyes. For a long moment, neither moved. Inside her, memories pressed forward. The London clinic, a young horse, her own trembling hands, and that terrible silence after a mistake. Not again. "This time I'll get it right." She sat quietly on the floor of the stall, legs crossed, boots just outside the straw. The horse snorted, shifted, but didn't retreat. She whispered, so soft even Arthur couldn't quite hear, "Hey there, friend. I'm not here to hurt you." Minutes ticked by. Arthur, moved by the quiet ritual, left them alone. Ellie stayed. She let the horse sniff her boot, then the sleeve of her jacket. Still, she made no move. In her mind, she repeated the promise. "Not again. This time, I'll get it right." The horse, exhausted, finally lowered his head. Ellie smiled. "Phoenix," she murmured, almost surprised by the name that surfaced, as if the horse himself had chosen it. "You're not finished yet." Outside, dawn broke in earnest. Arthur returned with coffee and found Ellie sitting, the horse now dozing lightly nearby. "He trusts you," Arthur said. Ellie's throat tightened. "He wants to. That's enough for now." Arthur handed her a file. "I found this in his paperwork. His real name's Sovereign. Belonged to Sir Alistair Finch, but that's all over. He's yours if you want him, but Ellie, this is a mess. The owner, he didn't just want to move on. He wanted it finished." Ellie looked at the papers, frowning. "What happened?" Arthur shrugged. "Rumor is the horse broke down after a bad race. Finch, he lost his wife last year. The horse was all she cared about. Now it's just a ghost he can't stand to see." Ellie ran a hand through her hair, mind racing. She looked at Phoenix, Sovereign, who stood quietly, watching her. "We'll start slow," she said. I'm not a vet. I can't promise a miracle, but I can give him time and a name that isn't cursed." Arthur smiled. "That's more than most would do." Ellie called Olivia from the road. "I'm bringing in a new horse. Prepare an isolated stall, something quiet. And Olivia, don't mention the name Sovereign to anyone." That afternoon, Phoenix arrived at Oakstead. The other horses whickered softly as he limped from the trailer, head high, every muscle tense. Ellie led him to the far stall, away from prying eyes, and left him a bucket of feed and fresh water. She sat outside the stall for hours, talking to him in a low, soothing voice about nothing and everything: the weather, the fields, the way morning fog curls around the hills. Later, as evening fell, one of the veterans, Mark, wandered by with a dog-eared magazine. He squinted at Phoenix through the bars. "Ellie, I think you need to see this." He handed her the magazine, open to a faded photograph. The headline read, "Sovereign, the Lost Champion." The picture was unmistakable: Phoenix, in his glory days, standing between a beaming woman and a proud Sir Alistair Finch. Ellie's heart sank. So many secrets, so much pain, hidden in one beautiful, wounded animal. But here, for now, Phoenix was safe. Here at Oakstead, there was no past, only the promise of healing for horse and human alike. And in the silence of the night, Ellie made herself another promise. "Not again. This time I'll get it right." Sunlight streamed in through the high windows of Oakstead Healing as Ellie Vance stood by Phoenix's stall, her arms folded, watching the horse nuzzle his breakfast. His coat gleamed with a rich chestnut shine, and though he still limped, there was a new alertness in his eyes. The barn was quiet but alive. Distant laughter from volunteers, the faint thump of a soccer ball as teens played near the fence, and the gentle sound of horses shifting in their stalls. The magazine Mark had handed her the night before still lay on her desk. Sovereign, the Lost Champion. Every time Ellie looked at it, a chill worked its way down her spine. She ran her fingers over the photo. The woman, eyes bright with hope, standing with a proud Sir Alistair Finch and the horse in the center. She looked at Phoenix, who watched her with wary curiosity, and she wondered how a creature could go from being loved so fiercely to being left behind. That morning, Ellie called the team for a quick meeting before sessions began. Oakstead's staff gathered: Olivia, Ben, Mark, and a couple of new volunteers. They sat on hay bales and overturned buckets, a mix of veterans, social workers, and animal lovers. Ellie held up the magazine. "Some of you have noticed our new arrival isn't just any rescue. His name is Phoenix. At least, that's the name he has now. But you should know, he was once called Sovereign. He was famous. He belonged to Sir Alistair Finch, a man who lost his wife and maybe lost his way. What happened to Phoenix before doesn't change what happens to him now. Here, he's one of us. That's all anyone needs to know." Ben asked, "You worried someone's going to come looking for him?" Ellie shrugged. "I don't know, Ben, but we'll do things by the book. For now, keep it quiet outside Oakstead. The less gossip, the better." Between therapy sessions that day, Ellie found herself pacing, distracted, unable to focus. She knew she had to learn more. She retreated to her tiny office, laptop open, her tea cooling on the desk. She searched: Sir Alistair Finch wife, Sovereign injury, Finch horse euthanasia. Dozens of articles flooded her screen, headlines about tragic losses, shattered fortunes, and the fall from grace of a champion stallion. One interview stopped her cold. Alistair's late wife, her eyes soft, voice gentle, talking about her miracle horse. This horse saved me. When everything seemed impossible, he carried me through. I believe in second chances. I believe he deserves them too. Ellie felt an ache beneath her ribs. The words could have been her own. She knew what it was to need a second chance, to cling to hope even when it hurt. She whispered, "I believe in second chances too." A loud knock startled her from her thoughts. She looked up to see Olivia at the door, face pale. "There's a man at the gate, expensive car. Says he's here on behalf of Sir Alistair Finch. Wants to speak to you." Ellie's mouth went dry. She closed her laptop, squared her shoulders, and followed Olivia outside. A gleaming black sedan sat by the fence, engine humming softly. A tall man in an immaculate suit stepped out, carrying a slim briefcase. His hair was perfectly combed, his movements deliberate. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Ms. Vance?" His voice was calm, almost friendly. Ellie nodded. "That's right. Can I help you?" He extended a business card. "Julian Croft, representing Sir Alistair Finch." She took the card, felt its weight, the embossed gold letters. She kept her face blank. Croft gestured to the barn. "I understand you've recently acquired a horse. Chestnut Stallion. Goes by Phoenix now, I believe." Ellie stood her ground. "We take in a lot of horses, Mr. Croft." He smiled again, thinner this time. "Of course. Sir Alistair only wishes to ensure that all loose ends are tied up. The horse in question was meant to be euthanized, for everyone's peace of mind." Ellie felt anger flicker inside her. "He's not a loose end. He's alive, and under my care." Croft's expression didn't change. "No one is accusing you of wrongdoing, Ms. Vance. Quite the opposite. We're grateful for your discretion. Sir Alistair would like to offer a generous donation to Oakstead Healing, a thank you for your cooperation in keeping this unfortunate situation private." He opened his briefcase, revealing a stack of documents and a check, the amount already filled in. It was more money than Oakstead had seen in years. Enough to fix the roof, build new paddocks, maybe hire another therapist. Ellie stared at the check, her pulse quickening. She shook her head. "You're asking me to stay quiet." Croft's voice softened, almost conspiratorial. "Discretion helps everyone, Ms. Vance. Sovereign's story doesn't need to become tabloid fodder, nor does yours. Take the donation. Let the past be the past." Ellie looked away, the London memory flooding back. Headlines, lawyers, the shame that nearly broke her. She forced herself to meet Croft's gaze. "No, thank you." For the first time, Croft's face betrayed a flicker of surprise. "Are you sure? Think about what you could do with these resources. The horse's history is complicated. Sometimes silence is the most compassionate choice." Ellie steadied her voice. "Silence isn't always compassionate. Sometimes it's just cowardice. Phoenix stays here, and his story's not over." Croft closed the briefcase, lips pressed in a tight line. "As you wish. We'll be in touch." He got back into the sedan and drove away, gravel spraying beneath the tires. Ellie stood by the fence long after the car disappeared, her hands shaking. Olivia came to stand beside her. "Are you okay?" Ellie let out a breath. "I don't know, but I couldn't take the money. I just couldn't." Olivia squeezed her shoulder. "You did the right thing." Ellie wanted to believe it. She returned to Phoenix's stall, sat beside the horse, who pressed his head against her arm. She stroked his mane, whispering, "We're in this together, you and me. I won't let them erase you." In the quiet, her phone buzzed with a new email. The sender, Julian Croft. Across the city, Croft called Alistair Finch, his voice even. She refused. She's idealistic. But everyone has a breaking point. Let me do some digging. Alistair's answer was curt. I want this finished, Julian. I don't care how. As the sun set, Ellie sat in the barn, the weight of her choices pressing down. Phoenix watched her, a silent ally in a battle she hadn't expected. The game had begun, and there would be no easy moves. But as she sat in the fading light, she found something she hadn't felt in a long time. Resolve. No matter what they tried to take from her, this horse, her sanctuary, her dignity, she would not let the past define her future. Not again. The night grew deep and quiet, but in the darkness, hope flickered. The next morning broke sharp and cold, the Welsh countryside shrouded in a stubborn mist. Ellie hadn't slept. She paced her kitchen, phone clutched tight in her hand, mind spinning with everything Julian Croft had said, and the meaning behind his words. The donation, the peace of mind. And now, the silent threat humming between the lines of his last look, as if he knew something about her, something no one else at Oakstead did. She poured herself black coffee, the bitter smell doing little to wake her up. Her laptop sat open on the table, email window glowing. She stared at the latest message from Croft, unread but pulsing with menace. He hadn't given up. She could feel him circling, waiting for her to slip. She braced herself, clicked open the email, no subject, no greeting, just an attachment titled, London Incident, PDF. Her stomach dropped. Her fingers hovered over the mouse. For a moment she considered deleting it, pretending it didn't exist, but that wouldn't make it go away. She opened the file. Rows of clinical text filled the screen. Scans of disciplinary reports, official letters from the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, incident summaries from the London Equine Rehabilitation Clinic. At the bottom, her name, her signature. She scrolled through pages of cold, factual language. Incorrect dosage administered. Adverse reaction resulted in euthanasia of patient. Investigation found procedural error, but no intent to harm. Practitioner Vance received formal reprimand. License retained under probation. Ellie squeezed her eyes shut. She could still hear the flatline of the heart monitor, the shouts, the silence. She'd relived that day 1,000 times, each memory sharper than the last. The grief in the owner's eyes. The sense that no matter what she said, no matter how she explained, the failure would always belong to her. Now Croft had her past in his hands, weaponized, ready to use. Her phone rang. She jumped, nearly spilling her coffee. She answered, voice barely steady. Hello? Croft's voice was silky, patient. Ms. Vance? I thought you might appreciate some context before we continue. I'm sure you recognize the file. Ellie said nothing, breathing through her nose. He continued, tone friendly, measured. This is not a threat. Not yet. But Sir Alistair is a man who values discretion. He would hate for anyone, donors, parents, the press, to get the wrong idea about your history. You understand how stories spread, how careers end overnight. Her voice came out sharper than she meant. You're blackmailing me. A soft laugh. Let's not use ugly words. Think of it as mutual protection. You don't want your past dug up, Ms. Vance, and Sir Alistair wants peace. All you have to do is let Phoenix go. Quietly. We'll make it worth your while. Ellie stared at the rain streaking her window. Her mind flashed to the faces of the teens she worked with, the veterans, her team, the fragile world she'd built here, the second chance she'd fought for, and how quickly it could all be snatched away. She gripped the phone tighter. If I say no? Croft's tone was gentle, final. Your file goes to the veterinary board, the press, your career, your sanctuary, all of it. Gone. A cold silence stretched. Croft waited. Ellie's anger blazed, sharp and sudden. I won't be bullied. Not by you. Not by anyone. He let out a sigh. I'd hoped you'd be reasonable. But everyone has a breaking point, Ms. Vance. I'll be in touch. He hung up. Ellie stared at her reflection in the window. For a moment, she looked almost like a stranger. Dark circles under her eyes, jaw set, shoulders hunched from too many nights without sleep. Her sanctuary, her hard-won reputation, the people and animals who depended on her, all suddenly in jeopardy. The weight of fear pressed down, thick and suffocating. For a moment, she wanted to collapse, to give in, to let the old shame swallow her. But as the phone call's echo faded, something else surfaced. A flicker of stubbornness, a refusal to be defined by her worst moment. She left the house and strode through the mud to the barn. The morning was gray and wet, the fields empty but for distant shapes of grazing horses. Oakstead felt strangely fragile now, each creak and groan of the old wooden beams reminding her how much she stood to lose. In Phoenix's stall, she sank to her knees, boots sinking into the straw. Phoenix nudged her shoulder with his soft nose. For a moment she let herself lean into him, drawing comfort from his warmth, his steady breath. She whispered, voice barely audible, "What do I do, huh? If I fight, they destroy me. If I quit, I lose you. I lose everything." Phoenix watched her with solemn eyes. He nudged her again, almost as if to say, "You're not alone." A soft sound behind her made Ellie turn. Ben stood in the doorway, concern etched in his face. "Everything okay?" he asked. Ellie nodded, wiping her eyes quickly. "Just a rough morning. I'll be fine." Ben didn't press, just lingered a moment before saying, "Whatever's going on, you don't have to handle it alone. You taught us that." Ellie tried to smile. "Thanks, Ben." He gave a little nod and left her to her thoughts. She spent the rest of the morning lost in work, forcing herself through the motions, therapy sessions with teens, paperwork, phone calls. But her mind kept circling back to the threat hanging over her, and the bitter knowledge that if Croft followed through, everything she loved could be destroyed. By lunchtime, she was exhausted. She retreated to the tiny break room, sat at the table, and tried to eat, but her appetite was gone. Olivia popped her head in. "Ellie, Dr. Wallace is here. He says it's urgent." Ellie found Arthur in her office, hat in hand, eyes worried. He shut the door behind him. "Ellie, I got a call from someone asking questions about your past in London, about that case. I didn't say anything, but I thought you should know. Word's getting out." Ellie's stomach dropped. "Arthur, what do I do? If I tell the truth, it could all blow up. But if I don't, they'll ruin me anyway." Arthur's expression softened. "Ellie, I know what happened wasn't your fault. You made a mistake. You paid for it. Don't let them use your past as a weapon. If you run, they win. If you stand up, maybe you get to write the ending." She shook her head. "I'm scared, Arthur. I fought so hard to get here. I can't lose it all now." He put a hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes, the only way out is through." Ellie wiped her eyes, drew a shaky breath, and nodded. As Arthur left, she sat staring at her phone. The fear was still there, but beneath it was something harder, steadier. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was just sheer stubbornness. Either way, she knew she couldn't give up. She returned to Phoenix's stall. He greeted her with a low nicker, pressing his head into her hands. She leaned into him, whispered, "I'm not running. Not this time." Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was still gray, but there was a hint of light breaking through the clouds. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time all day, Ellie felt like she could breathe. She sat with Phoenix until dusk, drawing strength from his presence, promising herself that she would not let fear dictate her life, or his. In the silent barn, as the night deepened, a new resolve took root. They would come for her again. She was sure of it. But she would meet them head-on, whatever it took. The storm had only just begun. The sky had cleared by dawn, leaving behind a fragile calm that seemed to settle over Oakstead Healing. Birds sang in the hedgerows, the grass glittered with dew, and in the stalls, horses greeted the day with expectant snorts. But for Ellie Vance, the world still felt poised on a knife's edge. Her chest ached with worry, her mind replaying Arthur's warning again and again. She moved through the morning chores almost automatically, mucking out stalls, checking water buckets, her hands steady but her thoughts tangled. Every time someone looked at her, Olivia, Ben, even the horses, she wondered if they'd heard a rumor, seen a headline, or sensed that the ground beneath their sanctuary was starting to shift. Mid-morning, after turning Phoenix out into a secluded paddock, Ellie sat on the split-rail fence and watched him limp along the perimeter, head high, nostrils flaring at the spring breeze. His injury was still there, a slight hitch in his gait, a reminder of pain. But the spirit was back. Each time she saw him push himself a little farther, a little stronger, she felt the knot of fear in her chest loosen just a bit. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Croft, this one short, almost taunting. "Last chance. Let him go or you lose everything." She deleted it. She wouldn't let him control the narrative. Not this time. But as she slid her phone back into her pocket, doubt crept in. If Croft made good on his threat, the media would come. The board would call. Everything she'd built, the trust of her team, the fragile piece of Oakstead, could unravel in days. She needed advice, perspective, anything to keep her from slipping back into despair. Without letting herself think too much, she dialed Dr. Arthur Wallace. The call rang a long time before he answered, voice rough with sleep and worry. "Arthur, it's Ellie. I need to talk. Can I come by?" He didn't hesitate. Always. Arthur's cottage sat at the edge of a tangled woodland, walls lined with old climbing roses and windows lit warm even on a gray day. Ellie arrived with a tin of biscuits under her arm, more nervous than she cared to admit. Inside, Arthur's place was a comforting jumble of books, veterinary journals, and faded trophies from another life. He ushered her into his study, gesturing for her to sit amid the paper piles. Books lined every wall, the air thick with dust and stories. She perched on the arm of a battered armchair, biscuit tin in her lap, and tried to summon the words. Arthur watched her for a long moment, then poured them both tea. "Go on then," he said gently. Ellie found herself telling the story she'd locked away for years, about the London clinic, the adrenaline rush of emergency calls, the critical case that changed everything. She recounted the night when a simple mistake, the wrong dosage, a moment's distraction, cost a young horse its life. She told him about the disciplinary board, the headlines, the probation, and the way people's eyes changed when they recognized her name. Arthur listened without judgment, his silence patient and kind. When she finished, she felt hollowed out, her secrets spilled into the quiet room. Arthur stirred his tea, then looked at her with calm, unflinching honesty. Ellie, they're using your past because they fear your present. The only way to disarm them is to own it yourself. She shook her head, hands trembling. But if I go public, if I admit everything, I might lose Oakstead. The donors, the board, they could all walk away. Arthur's eyes softened. Or maybe they see the real you, the one who got up again after being knocked down, the one who chose to help, not hide. If you run, Croft will never stop, but if you stand in the open, you take away his power. Ellie pressed her hands together, the words sinking in. You really think the truth can save me? He smiled, the lines on his face deepening. Truth won't protect you from pain, Ellie, but it will set you free, and it might just save more than you. For a long time, she sat in silence, letting hope and fear twist together inside her. Finally, she nodded. I think I have to try. Back at Oakstead, Ellie sat in her office, staring at a blank document on her laptop. The cursor blinked, silent and insistent, waiting for her to begin. She hesitated, remembering every moment she'd wanted to hide, every instinct telling her to keep the past buried. But Arthur's words echoed in her mind. If she didn't tell her story, someone else would. She began to type. She wrote about Phoenix, the stallion who'd been thrown away, the legacy he carried, the pain he'd survived. She wrote about Sir Alistair Finch and the tragedy that haunted him. And then, slowly, bravely, she wrote about herself. The London incident. The mistake that nearly ended her career. The months of shame and rebuilding. The reasons she'd chosen Oakstead, and why helping horses and people heal mattered so much to her. The words poured out, raw, honest, trembling with risk. She read them over twice, tears stinging her eyes, then posted the essay on the Oakstead blog. She shared it to social media, tagged a few trusted contacts in the equine therapy world, and waited. Her hands shook as she closed her laptop. For the first time in years, she felt lighter. Exposed, yes, but lighter. Within minutes, notifications began to ping. Comments, shares, messages. She forced herself to read them, some supportive, some skeptical, a few angry, but most were kind. Former clients, grateful parents, even other vets who'd made mistakes wrote to thank her for her honesty. You gave us hope. You're braver than you know. Ellie exhaled, relief and anxiety warring inside her. She stepped outside, the late afternoon light washing the barn in gold. Phoenix grazed in the far paddock, oblivious to the storm she'd just unleashed. Olivia caught up to her, breathless. Ellie, have you seen the numbers? The Post is everywhere. Reporters are calling, but so are families. People are sending donations. It's a lot. Ellie squeezed Olivia's hand. Thank you. I needed to do this. Inside, her phone buzzed again. A blocked number. Ellie hesitated, then answered. Silence, then Alistair Finch's voice, brittle, exhausted. I read your post. I see you decided not to be silent after all. Ellie waited, heart pounding. He spoke again, quieter. I don't know what you think you'll accomplish, but it won't change anything. Ellie found her courage. Maybe not. But I won't let Phoenix be a casualty in your grief, Sir Alistair. Not anymore. There was a pause, a sound like a breath caught between anger and heartbreak. Alistair hung up. Ellie stood in the fading light, the wind cool against her skin, the future uncertain but, for the first time, her own. She looked at Phoenix, grazing quietly, and whispered, We're still here. She didn't know what the next storm would bring. But tonight, at least, she'd chosen her path and reclaimed her story. The night after Ellie's confession felt endless, haunted by every vibration of her phone, every flicker of the porch light as strangers passed down the country road. Inside Oakstead's main house, Ellie wandered from room to room, unable to settle. She checked her email. Refresh, refresh, each time half dreading, half hoping for a sign that the world had moved on. Instead, the digital storm only intensified. Comments, interviews, requests for quotes, a dozen journalists wanting a statement, a handful of online trolls calling her a fraud, and a swelling chorus of support from parents, veterans, and former patients who knew her as the one who'd listened when no one else had. By dawn, the crisis had moved from rumor to headline. Someone in London's tabloids had seized on her post, spinning it into a dramatic story of scandal, cover-up, and redemption. Her phone rang with numbers she didn't recognize. Olivia intercepted the landline, fielding calls from both supporters and detractors. The Oakstead team circled around her, offering tea, shoulders, distraction, anything to keep her from buckling under the pressure. Ben brought coffee and stood in the kitchen, silent for a long time before speaking. "You did the right thing, Ellie. Some people are just looking for blood. But most people, they see what you're trying to do." Ellie nodded, gripping the mug. "I hope so. She stopped herself. "I just wish it didn't hurt so much." Mark, a veteran who usually avoided the limelight, came into her office that afternoon, holding a battered army duffel and his ever-present therapy dog, Chance. "You got more courage than any officer I ever met," he said, setting his duffel by the door. "If anyone tries to come through that gate to take that horse, they'll have to go through me, too." Ellie laughed, surprised by the sound, the first laughter in days. "Thanks, Mark. I hope it doesn't come to that." But the laughter faded quickly as she saw the stack of unopened emails on her desk. She spent hours replying to the ones that mattered. The frightened mother who wanted to know if Oakstead would still accept her anxious son. The sponsor who asked for reassurance that their donation would be well used. The small therapy center in Manchester reaching out for guidance after their own internal scandal. Each message took a piece of her, but each answer, honest, transparent, sometimes shaky, stitched her resolve a little tighter. It wasn't only support, though. Halfway through the afternoon, a notification pinged. Someone had shared a statement from Sir Alistair's camp. A dignified, impersonal press release lamenting the pain caused by unproven allegations and reckless behavior, casting him as a bereaved widower under siege by opportunists. The news cycle twisted in real time. Some sided with Ellie, others with Alistair. For every heartfelt message, there was another calling her reckless, incompetent, selfish. Ellie shut her laptop, pressing her fists to her temples. This was what Arthur had warned her about. Truth won't protect you from pain. Outside, she heard a familiar whinny. Phoenix. She hurried to the barn, desperate for air, for clarity, for anything that wasn't screens and accusations. Phoenix greeted her with a soft nicker, his chestnut coat catching the light that filtered in through the open doors. He nudged her shoulder, as if sensing her turmoil. She leaned against him, closing her eyes, letting his warmth calm the storm inside her. "I don't know if I'm doing this right. I just know I can't let them erase you," she murmured. She stayed with him, listening to his breathing, letting the familiar rhythms of the barn soothe her. She felt Mark's presence before he spoke. "Ellie, you might want to come outside. There's a news van at the gate." Her stomach dropped. "Already?" He shrugged. "There'll be more." Ellie squared her shoulders. Keep them out, Mark. No cameras inside. This is still a therapy center, not a circus. He grinned, then headed off to intercept the reporters, Chance at his side like a soldier on parade. Ellie watched from a distance as Mark, Ben, and Olivia managed the press. Calm, courteous, firm. She felt a surge of gratitude for her team. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't face it alone. The backlash didn't only come from outside. That evening, a call from the Oakstead board chair came in, voice brittle with worry. Ellie, I've read the statements and I understand your need to be honest. But the negative publicity, it could ruin us. Our insurance, our grants. Ellie interrupted, keeping her tone steady. I told the truth. I won't hide behind silence anymore. If you want to fire me, do it. But I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. There was a pause. The board chair's voice softened. No one's firing anyone. Not yet. But you need to know. We'll be watching how this plays out. If donations dry up, if clients leave, I know. I'm prepared to accept the consequences. After she hung up, Ellie sat in her office, staring at her trembling hands. She could feel the future unraveling in a dozen possible directions, some promising, some terrifying. She remembered Arthur's words, "Truth will set you free, but it might hurt." Her phone buzzed with another anonymous message. "You ruined my husband's legacy. Hope you're happy." She deleted it, but the pain lingered. Later, alone in the barn, Ellie tended to Phoenix's leg, gentle and patient, cleaning the wound, applying ointment, whispering encouragement. People can say what they want. We're not running. Phoenix nuzzled her shoulder, steady as ever. She smiled through tears. You're braver than I am. You know that? Over the next days, the media storm grew wilder. Some nights, Ellie dreamed of London, the clinic lights, the cold halls, the moment everything went wrong. Sometimes she woke in the dark, sure she'd lost everything, only to find Oakstead still standing, the horses still breathing, the team still fighting for her. One morning, as she was mucking stalls, Ben ran in, breathless. "Ellie, come quick! The local news is here. They want you on camera." She hesitated, but then nodded. "Let's do it." She wiped her hands, brushed straw from her hair, and stepped into the sunlight, facing the cameras with her back straight. She told the truth again, about her mistakes, about Phoenix, about second chances. A reporter asked, "Do you regret anything?" She paused, meeting the reporter's eyes. "I regret the pain my mistake caused, but I don't regret fighting for animals like Phoenix, or for people who need a place like Oakstead." That answer made the evening news. The next day, donations trickled back in. Letters arrived from strangers, telling her their own stories of failure and redemption. In the midst of chaos, something unexpected grew. Not just sympathy, but respect. Some saw her as a villain, yes, but many saw her as something else. Human and unbroken. One night, Mark found her sitting by Phoenix's paddock, gazing up at the stars. "Did you ever think you'd end up the center of all this?" he asked, lowering himself beside her. Ellie shook her head, a tired smile creeping in. "Never wanted to be. I just wanted to help." Mark clapped her on the shoulder. "You are helping, more than you know." She looked at Phoenix, standing tall against the dark. "He's still here, Mark. So am I." Mark nodded. "That's all that matters, Ellie." As the wind rustled the trees, Ellie realized she'd weathered the worst of the storm and was still standing. The scars of her past would never fully fade. But maybe, just maybe, she could transform them into something stronger. And somewhere, in the shadows beyond Oakstead's fences, she sensed that Sir Alistair Finch was watching, waiting, his next move unknown. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, Ellie felt hope. The storm had broken. Now, maybe there was room for light. The days that followed felt like living inside a pressure cooker. News trucks still loitered outside Oakstead's gates, their satellite dishes scraping the sky. Sometimes, when the wind shifted, Ellie could hear the muffled sound of reporters rehearsing their lines, speculating about her, about Phoenix, about the mysterious, wounded billionaire who had tried to make the past disappear. Clients arrived in cautious trickles, some with heads high, others with their eyes cast down, not wanting to be filmed or questioned. Through it all, Oakstead kept moving. Ellie clung to the rhythms of her work, feeding, grooming, leading sessions in the round pen. Phoenix was thriving. His limp grew less noticeable every day, and his eyes had lost that hunted look. Sometimes, at dusk, Ellie would catch him running, just for the joy of it, kicking up his heels as if he knew the world was watching and wanted to remind everyone what a champion looked like. But the scars of the scandal ran deeper than she wanted to admit. Every time she opened her email, she braced for venom, new threats from trolls, legal updates from Croft's firm, cryptic messages from strangers who claimed to know the real story. She tried not to read them all, but curiosity and fear tugged her in equal measure. One evening, after an exhausting day, she lingered at her desk, scrolling through the latest batch of messages. "I know what you did. You'll never escape it," one said. Another, "Thank you for speaking up. My daughter was at your center last year. You helped her more than anyone." And then, in her inbox, a forwarded press clipping. Alistair Finch photographed outside a marble townhouse, sunglasses on, jaw clenched, a headline screaming about his campaign against slander. The article painted him as a tragic figure, wealthy, broken, hounded by a woman exploiting his grief. Ellie stared at the screen, her chest tightening. She closed the laptop, unable to read another word. That night, sleep didn't come. She paced her bedroom, the floorboards creaking, the sounds of Oakstead settling around her. Every shadow felt full of judgment. She tried to drown her thoughts in tea, in old novels, even in the rain tapping against the window. But nothing helped. At midnight she gave up, pulling on boots and slipping out to the barn. Phoenix whickered softly when she entered, his ears flicking forward in the dim light. Ellie stood beside him, running her hands down his neck, feeling the heat and the slow, steady pulse. She whispered, "I'm so tired, Phoenix. What if I can't hold it together much longer?" Phoenix snorted, resting his head against her chest. She laughed quietly, brushing away the tears that had started to fall. She stayed there for a long time, letting the barn's warmth seep into her bones, until she heard a distant voice. Ben, calling from the house. "Ellie, phone! It's Arthur! He says it's important!" Ellie wiped her eyes, hurried across the yard, and took the receiver in the kitchen. Arthur's voice was tense, urgent. "Ellie, I heard from a contact in London. Croft's people are digging for more. They want new dirt. They've even tried to contact old clients, patients, families. This isn't just about Phoenix anymore. They want to destroy you." Ellie's heart pounded. "I can't let them hurt Oakstead. I can't let them hurt anyone else." Arthur's voice softened. "You need to get ahead of them. Tell the truth, before they twist it." "I already did. What more can I say?" You can talk about what you've done since. Make it clear that the past doesn't own you. Show them what you built, who you helped. Ellie hung up and stood there, phone still in her hand. She looked at Ben, who hovered nearby, concern etched on his face. You heard all that? Ben nodded. Ellie, nobody cares what some lawyer says about you. We know who you are. Oakstead's not just a place, it's you. And Phoenix. He wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. None of us would. She swallowed, emotion catching in her throat. Thanks, Ben. I needed to hear that. The next day, Ellie did something she'd never done before. She called a local journalist, someone she trusted, who'd covered Oakstead in the early days, who'd seen the therapy sessions, the children's triumphs, the veterans finding their feet again. She invited the reporter to visit, not for a scandal, not for a fight, but for a story about healing. They met in the round pen, Phoenix grazing nearby, and Ellie told her everything. She didn't hide her mistakes. She didn't make excuses. She spoke about her failure in London, about the endless struggle to forgive herself, about the dream of building a sanctuary where every second chance mattered. The journalist listened, taking careful notes, watching Phoenix with an expert eye. Why keep fighting when it would be easier to quit? She asked. Ellie looked at Phoenix and then at the reporter. Because if I quit, I'd be letting them win. I'd be teaching every kid who comes here that their mistakes define them forever. I won't do that. Not for myself, not for anyone. Later, as the reporter packed up, she promised to tell the full story. Not the tabloid version, but the truth. Ellie thanked her, hope sparking somewhere deep inside. The next week brought a new wave of challenges. Social media flared with debate. Some of Oakstead's longtime sponsors wavered, wanting reassurance. The local council called a special meeting, demanding a review of their grant. But every time Ellie felt the tide turning against her, something unexpected happened. A mother brought fresh-baked bread to the gate. A former soldier dropped off a check with no return address. A little girl who'd once been terrified of horses brought a drawing of Phoenix, captioned, "My hero." The Oakstead staff rallied, working long hours, standing up to the cameras, supporting every decision Ellie made. When trolls posted ugly rumors, Olivia replied with facts. When a tabloid tried to sneak photos, Mark blocked the driveway with his old truck, refusing to let them near the barn. And through it all, Phoenix became the quiet, beating heart of the center. His story spread, on social media, in interviews, in word of mouth, until he was more than just a discarded racehorse. He became a symbol of survival, of dignity reclaimed. Ellie felt the tide slowly shifting. There were still threats, still uncertainty. But each day she spent with Phoenix, each session she ran, each hand she held, made her more certain that she'd made the right choice. One night, as rain swept across the fields, a black car appeared at the end of Oakstead's long drive. Ellie watched from the porch as it idled, headlights slicing the night. The engine switched off. The driver's door opened, and a lone figure stepped out, tall, stiff, moving with a heaviness that suggested more than just years. Sir Alistair Finch. Ellie felt her pulse stutter. She walked to meet him at the gate, rain soaking her hair and jacket, boots sinking in the mud. Alistair didn't speak for a long moment. He looked at her, then at Oakstead, then at the glow of light spilling from the barn. At last, he said, "You've made quite a mess. I came to see for myself." Ellie nodded, holding his gaze. "You came about Phoenix." Alistair's eyes flicked to the barn, to the distant silhouette of the horse in his stall. His shoulders sagged. "I didn't come for the horse," he said quietly. "I came for an answer." Ellie waited. He shook his head, voice trembling. "You took everything I had left. I want to know why." Ellie stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't take anything, Sir Alistair. I just refused to let him be punished for your pain." The rain drummed down, and for a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Alistair looked at her, eyes shining in the darkness. "Then tell me, what now?" Ellie drew a breath, steady as she could. "Now, we do what's right. For Phoenix, for everyone." For the first time, Alistair nodded. He turned back to his car, but not before glancing once more at the barn, his expression unreadable. Ellie watched him disappear into the night, heart pounding, the storm raging all around. But for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. Dawn arrived heavy with mist, blanketing Oakstead in a pale, uncertain light. Ellie Vance awoke to the sound of hoofbeats, a steady, rhythmic drumming from the paddocks. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if she'd dreamed the night before. Alistair Finch standing in the rain, his voice trembling with grief, the tension between past and present hanging in the air like thunder. But there was no dream. The black car's tire tracks still marked the drive, and the conversation replayed in her mind as she hurried into her clothes, heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and resolve. Today, it felt like everything could shift again, for better or worse. She walked outside, boots wet with dew, and headed straight for the barn. Phoenix was already awake, head raised, nostrils flaring as he greeted her with a low nicker. She paused by his stall, resting her hand on the warm curve of his neck. "Big day ahead, huh?" she whispered. He snorted softly, nudging her arm as if to say, "Let's face it together." The other horses shifted restlessly in their stalls, picking up on the change in mood. Even the staff moved with a nervous energy. Olivia double-checking feed, Ben leading a group of veterans through stretching exercises in the yard, Mark making a show of patrolling the entrance with his ever-present coffee mug. The press vans had drifted farther away for now, but everyone sensed that something was building. By mid-morning, a car pulled up, unmarked, but unmistakably official. The local council's review committee had come. Ellie's chest tightened. This was the meeting she'd dreaded ever since her confession went public. Oakstead's license, their funding, maybe the very future of the center, all on the line. The committee consisted of 3 members: a stern woman with rimless glasses, a kindly retired school principal, and a young man who looked nervous just being there. They shook hands with Ellie, introductions brisk, then followed her through the center. She showed them everything: therapy arenas, stables, tack room, the wall of thank you notes and photographs from families Oakstead had helped over the years. She didn't shy away from the hard questions. The woman with glasses asked, "You're aware that your recent publicity has raised concerns? We have donors calling daily. The press paints an unflattering picture." Ellie nodded. "I am aware. That's why I've told the truth about my past, my mistakes, and my commitment to doing better. I can't erase what happened in London, but I can be transparent now. I can show you the results here. Oakstead's record with patients, our low incident rate, the growth in demand for our services. These are facts, not spin." The principal, flipping through a binder of testimonials, smiled. "I've seen some of your kids ride in the parade, Ms. Vance. They were proud." Ellie's throat tightened. "They have every right to be." The young man hesitated, then asked, And Phoenix? What is it about him that changed everything? Ellie glanced at the chestnut stallion, visible through the open barn door, grazing in his paddock. She took a breath. Phoenix is like many of the people who come here. Broken, thrown away, but not beyond hope. He's taught us all what it means to fight for a second chance, no matter how tough it gets. He reminds us to keep trying, even when the world wants to write us off. They finished the tour in the therapy arena, where a session with 2 veterans was underway. The veterans led gentle mares around the circle, practicing trust-building exercises. The committee watched quietly. Ellie stood at the rail, her hands clasped tight, praying her story and Oakstead's would be enough. As the committee left, the principal paused, smiling at Ellie. Don't lose heart. Sometimes the hardest battles bring out the best in people. She nodded, gratitude thick in her chest. Noon brought another challenge, a confrontation with Olivia in the tack room. The young assistant had been unusually quiet all morning, eyes shadowed with worry. When Ellie found her rearranging halters, she closed the door behind them. Olivia, talk to me. What's going on? Olivia turned, biting her lip. It's my parents. They're worried about me working here now. They've been reading the news, all the nasty comments. They say maybe I should quit before things get worse. Ellie felt the sting of guilt, knowing how much her choices were affecting everyone around her. I'm sorry, Olivia. I never wanted you or anyone here to feel unsafe because of me. Olivia's eyes flashed. It's not your fault. You were honest, and you helped me when nobody else would. I'm not leaving, Ellie. Not unless they drag me out. A wave of relief washed through Ellie. She reached for Olivia's hand. We'll get through this together. Oakstead is more than a job. It's a family, and families stick. Olivia smiled, eyes bright with unshed tears. Always. The afternoon brought a surprise visitor. This time, not a journalist or council member, but Julian Croft himself. He appeared on foot, suit pressed, hair perfectly combed, briefcase in hand. Ben met him at the gate, arms crossed, and escorted him to Ellie's office. Ellie steeled herself as Croft entered, closing the door behind him. He placed his briefcase on her desk, sitting down without waiting to be asked. Miss Vance, he began, voice cool. I trust you know why I'm here. Ellie met his gaze, unflinching. You want me to back down? He offered a tight smile. Not exactly. Sir Alistair no longer wishes to pursue legal action. The negative publicity has become unwieldy, but he requests that you sign a statement agreeing never to mention his late wife or sovereign, Phoenix, again, in public or private. Ellie shook her head. No. Phoenix's story belongs to him, and to everyone who's ever needed a second chance. I won't erase the truth for your client's convenience. Croft's eyes narrowed. You're playing a dangerous game, Ms. Vance. My client is not a man used to losing. Ellie's voice was steady, her resolve absolute. Neither am I. There was a long pause. Croft closed his briefcase, stood, and offered his hand. Ellie shook it, feeling the tension in his grip. He leaned closer, voice low. For your sake, I hope this ends peacefully. But if you persist, you should know. Not all wounds heal cleanly. He left without another word. Ellie sat at her desk, hands trembling, pulse racing. She stared at the spot where his briefcase had rested, replaying his threat again and again. But she refused to give in to fear. She walked to the paddock, where Phoenix grazed, the sun now breaking through the clouds. She stroked his neck, feeling the old scar beneath his mane, a mark of survival, not shame. "We're still here, Phoenix. They can't take that from us." Evening came, painting the fields with gold. The Oakstead team gathered for dinner, voices low but spirits stronger than ever. Mark raised a glass, the gesture simple but powerful. "To scars," he said, looking around the table, "and to the strength they leave behind." Ellie met his gaze, then looked at each of her friends, her family. She felt the storm still raging outside their walls, but inside, for tonight, there was peace. Phoenix watched from his paddock, head high, eyes bright. The world might doubt them, threaten them, or try to erase their story. But together, they would keep moving forward, one day at a time. Tomorrow would bring new tests, but tonight, loyalty and hope prevailed. Dusk bled into evening, a lavender hush falling over Oakstead. The day's worries seemed to cling to every rafter and gatepost, each shadow on the paddocks another reminder of the lines drawn and crossed. Ellie stood alone by the main barn, jacket zipped against the early spring chill, listening to the rhythmic chewing of horses bedding down for the night. Phoenix was in his paddock, mane lifted by the breeze, eyes fixed on something far beyond the fence. He looked almost mythic in the fading light, every scar and muscle etched in gold. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, a text from Olivia. "He's here." Alistair Finch at the gate, alone. Ellie stared at the message for a long moment, a cold, electric tension building inside her. She knew this moment would come, but it felt both inevitable and impossible. She drew a slow breath, wiped her hands on her jeans, and made her way to the gate. Sir Alistair stood waiting, coat buttoned to the throat, hair silver in the dying light. He didn't look like the villain from the news articles, nor the broken man from the old videos. He looked tired, hollowed out. Ellie opened the gate. "You came alone." Alistair nodded, his gaze roaming across the yard. "I said I wanted an answer. I meant it." They walked in silence past the barn and toward the round pen, where the last rays of sunlight filtered through the slats. Phoenix watched them approach, ears flicking, breath misting in the cool air. Alistair paused at the fence, both hands gripping the top rail, knuckles white. "He was my wife's joy," Alistair said, his voice low. "Not mine. Not really. She saw something in him. I saw an investment. After she died, I thought if I could just rid myself of everything that reminded me, maybe I could breathe again. But every decision I made, every time I tried to cut him out of my life, she haunted me. Her laughter, her hope. I blamed him because he was the only piece of her left." He turned, meeting Ellie's gaze. For the first time, his eyes were wet. "I couldn't save her, so I destroyed what she loved, thinking it would hurt less." Ellie said nothing. The words caught in her throat, memories of her own mistakes flooding back. She watched Alistair's face, saw the years of grief carved into every line. Phoenix stepped closer to the rail, nostrils flaring. Alistair flinched, then reached out hesitantly, laying his hand on the horse's neck. The stallion stilled, eyes wide but unafraid. "She'd talked to him for hours," Alistair whispered. "She believed he could heal anyone. I thought she was foolish. I see now. Maybe I was the foolish one." The round pen fell silent except for the sounds of the evening, the distant laughter of the staff, the wind rattling the barn doors, Phoenix's slow breathing. Ellie finally spoke, her voice gentle. "You're not the only one who's blamed a living thing for pain they didn't cause. We do it because it's easier than facing the truth inside us." Alistair's shoulders sagged. He didn't pull his hand away from Phoenix. I thought if I controlled every piece of her legacy, maybe I could rewrite the ending. Maybe I could make sense of the loss. Ellie stepped beside him, laying her own hand on Phoenix's mane. We can't rewrite the past, but we can choose what comes next. They stood like that for a long moment, the quiet settling around them. Finally, Alistair spoke, almost in awe. He forgave me, even after everything. Why? Ellie smiled, tears in her eyes. That's what survivors do. They forgive so they can keep living. A silence, deep and raw. Alistair took a shuddering breath. I want to help. I can't bring her back. I can't erase what I did. But maybe I can make sure her legacy is more than pain. Ellie looked at him, searching for an angle, a trick, but saw only sincerity. I think she'd like that, she said quietly. A flock of crows cut across the sky, black shapes swirling over the field, and for the first time in a long time, Ellie felt something like hope flicker in her chest. They left the pen, walking back toward the barn. Alistair paused at the edge of the paddock, looking back at Phoenix. I know what must be done, he said. His voice was steady now, the words final. Ellie didn't press him. Some answers had to come in their own time. Later that night, after Alistair had gone, Ellie sat at her desk, staring out the window at the moonlit yard. Her phone was quiet for once, the internet's noise kept at bay by exhaustion and a kind of sacred hush. Ben knocked on her door, stepping in with 2 mugs of cocoa. He handed her one, sitting on the edge of her desk. I saw him leave. Everything okay? Ellie nodded. He's letting go. I think for the first time, he's not running from the pain. Neither am I. Ben grinned, raising his mug. To scars, then, and to letting them heal. They drank in silence, the warmth a balm after a day of cold confrontations. Outside, Phoenix stood in his paddock, silhouetted against the stars, no longer just a survivor, but a symbol of forgiveness and possibility. Ellie leaned her head against the window, letting herself finally breathe. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, what backlash, what new challenge, what whisper of doubt might creep in. But for this one night, peace settled over Oakstead, and somewhere, she believed, her own scars began to fade, making room for something stronger in their place. Spring came late to Oakstead that year, as if the land itself needed time to thaw from all it had endured. But when it arrived, the world seemed to wake up at once. The air shimmered with the scent of new grass, apple blossoms dusted the paddock fences, and every sunrise brought more light than the day before. In that season of change, the center itself transformed. Ellie Vance felt it first, deep in her bones, a sense of turning the page. She woke earlier, slept better, and found herself smiling for no reason. The staff noticed, too. Olivia humming as she worked, Ben whistling as he repaired the pasture gate, Mark organizing an impromptu barbecue to celebrate the fact we're all still standing. Even the horses moved with more energy, especially Phoenix, whose coat had grown glossy, whose limp was now a rare afterthought, and whose eyes shone with an almost mischievous intelligence. One morning, a letter arrived in an envelope heavy with wax and weight. Ellie recognized the Finch family crest before she even opened it. Inside, Sir Alistair's handwriting filled a page with careful, measured strokes. Ms. Vance, I have spent many nights considering my actions, my anger, and the hole left behind by my wife's absence. You once said we cannot rewrite the past, but we can choose what comes next. I am ready to choose. Enclosed is the deed to a parcel of land adjacent to Oakstead and a trust fund in my wife's name. Use them as you see fit. Let her kindness live on through your work. I have also authorized the legal transfer of all rights to Sovereign Phoenix to your care. May this be a new beginning for us both. Alistair Finch Ellie read it twice, tears welling in her eyes. The relief, the vindication, and the sudden, overwhelming gratitude left her breathless. She called Olivia and Ben into her office, handed them the letter. Olivia squealed and hugged her. Ben let out a whoop, then choked back tears, shaking his head in disbelief. "Does this mean, are we safe?" Olivia asked, voice trembling. Ellie nodded, smiling. "It means Oakstead has a future, Phoenix has a home, and so do we." Ben grinned. "We should tell everyone." And they did. A few weeks later, the entire Oakstead community, staff, clients, families, volunteers, gathered in the new therapy arena built on the donated land. A plaque gleamed near the entrance, the Lila Finch Healing Center, in honor of second chances. Alistair attended, standing quietly at the back. He wore no suit, only a plain jacket and jeans, blending in with the crowd. He spoke to no one at first, only watched as Ellie addressed the assembled group, her voice clear and sure. "I want to thank all of you for your faith, your resilience, your willingness to believe that a scar is not the end of a story, but the mark of healing. Oakstead is proof that even the deepest wounds can bring people together, and that hope can rise from what we once thought was lost. Today, we begin again." Thunderous applause followed. Phoenix, led by Mark, trotted around the new arena, pausing at the fence so children could stroke his nose, so veterans could rest their hands on his powerful neck. To everyone there, he was more than a horse. He was a living symbol of redemption. After the ceremony, Alistair found Ellie at the paddock fence. He stood awkwardly for a moment, searching for words. "I saw the plaque," he said at last. Ellie nodded. It seemed right. Alistair's voice was quiet. She would have liked this. She believed in healing more than anything. Ellie smiled. So do we. For a while they stood together in companionable silence, watching Phoenix graze in the sunlight. The past still lingered. No forgiveness could erase every regret. But now it felt softer, like an old scar finally allowed to fade. Life at Oakstead settled into a new, richer rhythm. Clients returned in greater numbers, drawn by the story of survival and hope. Therapists from other centers called to ask Ellie for advice, hoping to build places like hers in their own towns. Donations arrived from across the country, sometimes large checks, sometimes a handful of coins, always accompanied by notes. "Thank you for not giving up. My son found himself here. You reminded me I'm not alone." Phoenix became a fixture in the community, starring in therapy sessions, school visits, even a local TV spot titled "Second Chances, the Horse Who Would Not Be Broken." Kids drew his portrait. Veterans taught him new tricks. Sometimes Ellie caught him standing atop the hill above the center, mane flying in the wind, the very image of strength reborn. Ellie herself was changed. No longer did she flinch at the memory of London or the old mistakes that once haunted her sleep. She spoke openly about them at conferences and interviews, not as wounds, but as part of her journey. Her story gave courage to others who'd stumbled and fallen, and for all that had changed, the work remained the same. Quiet, demanding, profound. Every morning, Ellie walked the paddocks, breathing the sweet air, feeling the world's slow, stubborn healing. She listened to the stories clients brought, shared their laughter and tears, marveled at the small victories. A child brushing a horse for the first time, a veteran standing a little taller, a parent daring to hope. On the anniversary of the center's reopening, Ellie organized a bonfire on the hillside. The whole community came. There was music and food and, at her insistence, stories. One by one, people stood and spoke about what Oakstead meant to them. Ben went first, his voice gruff but steady. "This place gave me my life back." Olivia wiped her eyes. "It's not just a job, it's family." Even Mark, never one for speeches, stood and cleared his throat. "We're not here because we're perfect. We're here because we know what it's like to hurt and to heal." At last, Ellie spoke. "We all have scars," she said, the flames flickering behind her. "Some we can see, some we carry inside. What matters isn't hiding them, it's what we do with them. Sometimes, if we're lucky, we find a place and people who help us turn scars into something beautiful, something that helps others heal too." The crowd murmured in agreement. Above them, Phoenix stood silhouetted against the firelight, strong and serene. When the embers died and people drifted home, Ellie lingered at the top of the hill. She felt the weight of everything they'd survived and the lightness of everything yet to come. Phoenix stood beside her, his breath warm in the night air. She whispered, "We did it, didn't we?" Phoenix nuzzled her shoulder, the old scar on his neck nearly invisible beneath his thick mane. Ellie looked up at the stars, hope settling over her like a blanket. Sometimes, victory wasn't about defeating an enemy or erasing the past. Sometimes, it was simply finding the strength to begin again, together.